20 months, I took a startup staffing and recruiting company from $0 to about $3.2 million in revenue and was able to exit without having to transition at all. I'm going to break down the 6 steps that I did with one of my clients recently to actually get her out of her business so that she could sell. It's not actually that complicated, but most people just do the wrong things. Now, if you're wondering why I'm telling you this, my name's Brody Vinson. It's only because I knew how to hire people, train people, and build a management structure. Now, I didn't start off knowing these things, but I learned them through a lot of trial and error and going through a very, very intense 20 months. Now, what I do now is I actually help implement these things that I learned into other people's businesses so that they can have that removal from their business and the ability to sell. And the thing is, like I mentioned before, it's not all that complicated. It all just comes down to knowing how to hire, how to train, maintain, retain, and ultimately build a management structure that allows you to leave the business. Now, I want to share a little quote with you that I think illustrates this perfectly. I think I originally saw this from Cody Sanchez, but it goes a little bit something like this. It's just your job as a CEO is to build a team so good that it runs your business better than you can. And then the next step is just to fire yourself, right? You got to fire yourself from the role that you're in so that you can actually sell your business without being in it. I'm not going to say what her name is because I'm big on protecting the privacy of my clients. So in this video, I'm just going to call her Jill. I'll refer to her as Jill. And she's the owner of a mental health counseling practice. Now, she had built this practice over the course of about 7 years, and she'd actually done a really great job, as many business owners do, at building a team. Now, this team was a few different counselors that were actually seeing the clients, and all she was doing is managing them. She also had an office admin that was kind of bringing in new people, assigning them to the right counselors, and just handling a lot of the day-to-day work. But the issue was that Jill was actually spending about 10 or 15 hours a week managing the counselors, hiring them and training new ones. And so she needed someone to take over that. For someone who was going to buy her business, the reality of the situation is she would struggle to sell it like this. And if she even did sell it, she would probably have to work in the business for at least a couple of years, kind of transitioning herself out of the business. That's not what she wanted. Go ahead and subscribe just to stick around for more videos like this where I cover these things. So step number 1 of what I actually did with her is we reverse engineered what the perfect hire was for her, but also what the worst kind of hire was for her. Now, this is going to be different for every business, and that's the difficult thing. You've got to actually take a look at your history of hiring people and who you've hired that's worked out and who you've hired that hasn't worked out, and be objective about this. Now, the issue I found with Jill, and that I think I found with most business owners when they go to hire, is they don't have any hiring guidelines. So Jill was in this position. She would kind of hire blindly, and she would just talk to all these new people when she needed to hire someone, but she didn't actually have something to guide her through this process. So the number 2, the thing that we did about this problem was we actually created a hiring guideline sheet. Now this, you don't have to overcomplicate this. For us, this is literally like a 3-page Google Doc. I might show it on here, but it's a literal 3-page Google Doc that shows what qualities the perfect hire has and what qualities the worst hire have. The second reason that we did this hiring guidelines sheet is it actually created the ability for transferability, which is something I'm going to talk about later in this video. So stick around to the end to see how all of this comes together. The important thing is that you customize this to your business. So again, think back to anyone you've ever hired who has done a really great job. Your perfect employee, whether they're still with you or not. What qualities did they have coming in? What qualities have some of them shared? But also think back to the ones that have been the absolute worst ones. Maybe someone caused a major problem. Maybe, in her case, there was people that had gone off and started their own thing and took her clients, or had left very early, unexpectedly, and just caused a lot of problems. So take note of what the worst ones have in common and what the best ones have in common. Document these things on a Google sheet so that whenever you talk to someone that you're thinking about hiring, you can have that up in front of you, literally use it as a checklist and see either this person is great or this person sucks and it's not going to work out. Very, very important to take note of history and actually not repeat yourself. I find that many business owners do just repeat themselves, and those who repeat themselves are doomed to fail. Now, number 3, the third thing that we did is that we created a scheduled onboarding process for her to bring on new hires. Now, again, it's important that I mention that we documented this. Documenting is something you're going to hear me say a lot of times, not just in this video, but probably in any other video you watch of mine, documentation is so freaking key. So what we call these in the world of scaling businesses is standard operating procedures, or SOPs. So if you think about what that means, it's a standard operating procedure. So you have things that you do in your business, and you should do them the same way every time if you really want it to scale up. So for her, this was the hiring guidelines and then onboarding guidelines. All that onboarding means is when you hire someone, it should be very easy for them to understand exactly what they're doing in the business and how to do it. So for her, this was a very regimented process. It started with taking them through this training sheet that she had that was just kind of the standard way to train someone on her policies and procedures with client care. And then from there, she would actually slowly ramp up their workload. And she slowly ramped it up to see how they were doing at retaining the clients. Now, that's another key I want to mention here is that first, it started with the training. It hinged on this slow ramp up process. The next thing that was really important here is that there was weekly check-ins. So she would check in with them weekly, kind of at the end of the week, just to debrief, touch base, and make sure that they were doing a good job retaining their clients and still had them, and that they actually were learning the job well and knew what they were doing. And if they were having trouble, she would try to correct it. And if they were continually having trouble and not fixing their mistakes, then she would have to let them go. And that's just the honest truth. Don't hold on to people that cannot figure it out, even if you're doing all the right things. Now, the other thing that was really important about this is I mentioned retention a few times here. Retention of clients is really the thing that drove revenue and profit in her business. So she had to take a look on her weekly check-ins on if someone was actually retaining their clients the right way. And if they weren't, that was the metric that actually allowed her to understand whether or not to keep them. So the other thing here is you need to have a set of guidelines within this onboarding process that help you understand whether or not it's working out. I think a really important rule here is you should hire slow, fire fast. So when you hire people, you should not just jump at any candidate. You should use hiring guidelines that you created to really work through and find the right person. But then if they're not working out in the onboarding and you're doing all the right things, fire them. You don't want to have people sinking your ship of your business. Now, the fourth thing that we did is we created a set of maintenance rules to actually keep these people satisfied, trained, and retained. And I have a little bit of a standard in my business for anyone that I work with, and it's the 3 C's of culture. So these are caring, consistency, and cultivating. So I'll go over consistency first because these are in no particular order. But consistency is that weekly check-in that she had. So the weekly check-in should continue even after someone's all trained and onboarded, because if you check in weekly with someone that's a direct report of yours, that allows you to really understand what's going on with them on a regular basis and help correct them when things are going wrong or do a few of the things I'm going to talk about here. Now, the next thing is caring. You have to actually take an honest interest in their lives and their needs and their goals, because businesses and managing people is all about goal alignment. The employees that you have in your business need to have alignment with your goals, or the business is not going to make money. So you need to actually take an interest in what their goals are and then figure out how to align them with yours. Now, the third thing is the cultivating. It's not enough just to care about their lives, their needs, and their goals. You have to do that, but you also have to cultivate them, which means you need to do things to actually support them. So if they want to grow fast, if they want to, in her case, if they want to fill a client load, she needs to go do the things that it takes to actually bring those clients to them or help them find them. Now, those are the things that are actually going to keep people around and create just a culture that you want to be part of. The other thing I would say about culture and keeping people retained is, as a leader, you really need to be a chameleon. So a lot of leaders, a lot of business owners I've found feel like their employees need to adjust to their particular style of communication, when in reality, it's exactly the opposite. It's your job as a leader to really be a chameleon and to adjust to the communication style of whoever you're talking to so that they feel most comfortable. A little bit counterintuitive, but very important. Now, the fifth thing that we did was actually the really fun part, which is the actual removal of her from the business. So if you took note up to this point, what we've done is we've created hiring guidelines, onboarding guidelines, and training guidelines. So the next logical step was to have someone else do that instead of her. Now, what we did for this, and one thing I find in many businesses is that there's people working in the business who have either shown a little bit of leadership or who are really good at their jobs and really driven that are not getting as much opportunity as they need to. And it's simply because the business owner just hasn't had the conversation with them yet. So in this case, this was exactly the case with Jill. There was one counselor that was in this position where Jill went and talked to her and realized she wanted to grow more in her role. So what we did is we came up with a promotion and compensation plan for this counselor, and we were going to make her the lead counselor, where she would be getting extra salary and also, this is the important part, extra duties in her job. Now, I have a little saying, which is with increased pay comes increased responsibility, which means you don't get paid more without getting more responsibilities, but you also usually don't get more responsibilities without getting more pay, or at least more upside or ability to make money. And this keeps everyone just kind of growing at a reasonable pace, and also ties back into if someone's in the business, they need to be making the business money. So those duties should be linked to making the business money. And in this case, it was. So what we did is once she was promoted and she was in this new position, we started actually training her. So we created a list of all of these admin duties where basically this new manager was going to be managing all of the counselors and also the office admin. So there was a number of things that my client was doing on just a regular basis, those 10 to 15 hours that she was spending in the business that she needed to take off of her plate. So those became the new duties of her lead counselor. So over time, we just had her train her. And this took about 2 months where she was just shadowing her and doing things. And basically the structure for if you're trying to train someone is you should start out by having them observe and shadow you while you do the work you're trying to teach them. Have them take notes, ask questions, get feedback about what they're seeing. And then eventually you switch roles where they're doing the work and you're shadowing and observing them and making sure to correct them when need be until they eventually get it right without even needing to ask you questions or get feedback from you. When they're getting it right without needing that feedback from you, that's when you can actually let them off, let them loose to do their own thing. Now, so what we did is the lead counselor now knew how to hire people, onboard them, and continue to train them. So my client didn't have to do this on her own anymore. She was able to just sit back, let her do her thing, and take more of a passive role in the business. So by this time, she had actually built herself out of her business. Now, the actual training I described is the purpose of that is that when someone buys the business, they're going to pay more and they're not going to make you stay in the business if someone like this lead counselor is already running the business. Now, what I would call this in any business is simply just an operator of the business. This is kind of a high-level manager or operator that just runs the business and does all of the day-to-day kind of grunt work or management. And having that, I cannot understate the value of just having that, because it's the only reason I was able to sell my business. And really, it's the only reason anyone's able to sell their business. Now, if you're someone who's trying to grow your business, you're established, but you just can't figure out how to scale it, and you want to understand how this could apply to your business, number one, I would recommend you go ahead and subscribe just to stick around for more videos like this where I cover these things. But I would also go to the link in the description here and actually go apply for a call with me so that we can understand how this applies directly to your business and just have a conversation about it. I hope this can help you in growing your business in 2024 and beyond. And until next time, good luck.